In this video, we'll show how and why consumer surplus is area between price line and demand curve, and producer surplus is area between price line and supply curve. Both curves are nonlinear. In the previous video, we studied linear curves. We'll use Mathematica. Define demand curve. As price and quantity are inversely related, therefore beta 1 must be negative. We assume here beta 1 is minus 4. Intercept alpha 1 is 97. Define the same in Mathematica.
Define supply curve. As price and quantity are positively related, therefore beta 2 must be positive. We assume here beta 2 is 2. Intercept alpha 2 is also 2. Define the same in Mathematica. In equilibrium, set the demand and supply equal, and solve for the equilibrium market quantity. It is 2.95. Put the equilibrium quantity either in the demand or supply equation and solve for equilibrium market price. It is 62.28.
Let's show it graphically. Plot the demand curve. Plot the supply curve. Define dotted lines. Show intersection of two curves and resulting equilibrium price and quantity. Price is 62.28 and quantity 2.95. Notice that along the demand curve towards left, consumer is willing to pay more than the equilibrium price. Therefore, area, in monetary terms, under the demand curve and above the market price line is consumer surplus. Likewise, along the supply curve towards left, producer is willing to sell at prices less than the equilibrium price. Therefore, area, in monetary terms, above the supply curve and below the market price line is producer surplus.
Underlying principle in case of consumer surplus is diminishing marginal utility. Each additional unit provides less satisfaction to consumers. Underlying principle in case of producer surplus is increasing marginal cost, producing additional units becomes more costly due to diminishing returns. Plot shaded area for consumer surplus. Show with previous diagram. plot shaded area for producer surplus. Show with previous diagram. Here we show both shaded areas and market equilibrium at the intersection of demand and supply curves.
Using calculus and mathematical economics, we show consumer surplus, as shown here. This is integration of demand function showing area under the demand curve, vertically between demand curve and x-axis, and horizontally between y-axis and intersection of demand and supply curve. This area subtracted from the previous area. It is rectangular area showing expenditure. This is whole area of integration. This rectangular area shown by dotted lines is subtracted, leaving us with this upper area, the consumer surplus. Here, we input this formula into Mathematica. Giving us 68.18 as consumer surplus. This is Mathematica list showing us 3 calculations. First element is the integration part, which is whole area under the demand curve. Second element is area of the expenditure rectangle. And the third element is difference between the two, giving us the area between demand curve and the price line, which is consumer surplus.
Now let's turn to producer surplus. Using calculus and mathematical economics, we show producer surplus as shown here. This is rectangular area, showing expenditure. This is integration of supply function showing area under the supply curve, vertically, between supply curve and x-axis, and horizontally between y-axis and intersection of demand and supply curve. The result is producer surplus, the area above the supply curve and below the market price line. The value is 102.898. This piece of Mathematica code puts shade in producer surplus area. It has random color function. Every time you hit return on keyboard, color changes. This is Mathematica list showing us 3 calculations. First element is area of the expenditure rectangle. second element is the integration part, which is area under the supply curve. And the third element is difference between the two, giving us the area between supply curve and the price line, which is producer surplus.